Hey guys, thanks so much for joining today. And it's a great Thursday here, Thursday. And yeah, I know that was really bad, but anyway, I felt the need. So just a quick heads up, when it comes to next week, we are not going to have training because I will be flying from New York back to Nashville, back out to Vegas. So it'll be a pretty packed week. And so I just want to give you the heads up there. Uh, Let me actually double check that on my calendar here for 1 second. It was either this week or next week. It was the following week. So no, we will have training coming up. So I apologize. We will have training next week. My bad. Anyway, for today, once again, if you need it, just Q&A if you have any questions throughout the process. So some quick updates where we're at currently. So here we have, once again, the great collaboration. As you guys know, this is a big project that I put on. This is actually something that started in November of last year. I was in Houston with my business partner, Roderick, and he did an event with about 40 people in his organization. And the interesting thing about that was I had this epiphany, this idea that we should do something to spread across, use it as a beacon of opportunity to bring people together from a collaboration standpoint. And that's how the great collaboration came about. May 11th, 2024. If you haven't registered yet, tgcconference.com. And, to correlate with some of the stuff we have here, once again, we're going to have our marketing team talk about different ways that you can market. So, including email blasts, including Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all that stuff, different ways you can scale your business. Speaking of scale, we've got key ideas for immediate growth. That is our friend at AIG Corebridge, Joe Ross. He's going to talk about LIRPs. Ironically, that's what we're going to talk about, how to illustrate today. And then we're going to have some breakout sessions. Last but not least, we're closing out the deal with Mr. David McKnight. And Mr. David McKnight also has an idea of what is a LIRP. So you can actually talk about if your clients want to substantiate what you're talking about with something visual. You have an acclaimed author giving you a 7-minute video that's on YouTube and it's free for you to utilize with them as well. So how do you go to market with a client? You substantiate it with facts, data, and other resources so they don't go all these other places to find it, because if you go on the internet, you'll find everything that you want and then some. So they'll all look up the goods of the LIRP, the bads of the LIRP, and everything in between. So tailor your story and then ultimately have the client with links to substantiate exactly what you were looking to talk about. So I know there's a hand raised, just a heads up. We're not going to do open mic. So if you have a question, just put in the Q&A and then I can answer it throughout the process. If you've missed any trainings, what I'd highly recommend is go to my YouTube site at Valor Financial, and we have all the trainings over the last year and a half, here for your pleasure. The one that if you talk about from 2 weeks ago, we talked about how to have a tax diversification conversation. Great story. Again, it's the sizzle and not the steak, but now we have to figure out how to fry up the steak to make it good for the consumer to enjoy it. So really, that's what we're going to talk about today. But if you miss any of my prior trainings, they are right here at Valor Financial. I think you get a good one with the understanding annuities as well. So we're going to look at that, down the pike, because this quarter is all about LIRPs, all about retirement planning, all about ways to help our clients get tax deductions, business planning, all that stuff. So this is probably one of my favorite quarters to talk about different strategies. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive in. Now, there are ways that you can get to WinFlex, and through us, as we have our business through 3Mark for the most part. We want to, if you haven't registered yet and you're like, what is this? Email me, phil@valorfs.com, the easier email address. But you would just log in and you would be able to not only see everything, so we could always go through this deep dive again on their site, but this is our back office. This is where we host everything, including WinFlex, and it'll single sign you in. You'll get all the carriers you need and then some. But I'm going to go through mine because I have a whole giant list and carriers, and so I'm also pretty biased to this because it's mine. So we're in WinFlex, okay, and I'll zoom it out a little bit so you guys can see it better. Illustrations, I'm going to click here. And so this will open up, and what you'll see is it'll be an open canvas. So again, when we look at what we're planning on doing with the consumer, there's two types of IULs. The first IUL is death benefit focused. We already know the death benefit they want. We're looking for a premium to go for that death benefit. The other way is we typically know what type of premium they want, and we're looking for accumulation. So we're looking for the least amount of death benefit possible to give them more accumulation opportunity. So this is the second one that we're going to look at. We're going to look at accumulation. And what I want to show you today is not only how to run it, but how to run it in a multi-carrier environment too. Because once again, we are brokers of insurance. We're not insurance agents. So we have several options at our fingertips to give our client to hopefully find the right solution for them. Okay. So I'm going to go first off with my alma mater, if you will. So the QOL portfolio. Then I'm going to click on the max accumulator. Okay. So here we're going to hit create client. And I'm just going to use myself, good old Phil Resch, and I'm going to date myself. I'm going to go back a couple of years, and I'll do standard non-tobacco because I am, well, I wish, and Tennessee resident. So stuff you got here, date of birth is always better because when you do date of birth, there's some carriers who are aged last and some who are aged nearest. Age nearest is 6 months before, 6 months after your date of birth. That's your insurance age, okay? Age last, there's very few carriers that do it. North American, Columbus, I'm missing more, but you get the point. So we'll just say standard on tobacco, Phil Resch, and they give you an open canvas here, okay? And the open canvas is a situation where they want you to be the architect of the design. So they go no solve premium and they give you $1 million and 9,000. Now, you could, in this scenario, do exactly that and try and plug and play, move some over here, move some over there, or you could let the computer do the work for you. I'm in the mindset of work smarter, not harder. So I want to find the face amount, the least amount of face amount possible. Or let's just say when you talk about LIRPs, you say to someone, how much are you willing to put into this type of policy for the next 10, maybe 15 years? Also depends on age. So I'm 40 in this scenario, and I want to do it for 15 years. 15 years, I'm going to put, let's just say $15,000 in. You can do monthly, annual. I'd probably stay away from quarterly. It's typically the most expensive when it comes to these type of scenarios. But I'm going to click on this calendar here. Or excuse me, before I do that, the solve here, I want to do minimum face, no max. Okay. Got rid of those other parameters, 15,000. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to double click here. I'm looking at year at 15. Not 145 at 15. Click off it and double click here and click 0. The reason why from the funding scenario I do years is because in certain carriers, you'll see it, it's really funky. Like for AIG Corebridge, it'll say 40 at the top, but it'll say year 1, 41. Some carriers will say 40 at the top and then 40 in year 1. So there's some funky designs. And if you illustrate it like 40 to 60, then another carrier might get an extra year's worth of premium in there. So keep an eye on when you do these things, how some people like have it. Or you could start out with age. I want to go to 55. As you can see here, it says 40 to 54, but I know I want 15 years. So you could start with age and then change it to year. And then you could see that was actually 16 years. So 1 to 15. Now, this is a big thing for me And this is something that a lot of people don't understand in the industry. Every single insurance carrier is putting their best foot forward to show at the top of the spreadsheet. And when you show the top of the spreadsheet, ethically speaking, I don't find that to be the right thing for the client because everyone is trying to win and jockey for position, so you'll sell their product. Now, in the back end, the insurance carrier has the ability to change rates. Okay. So you'll see in certain situations, some people will look great up front and then they don't look great behind the scenes from years to come. I'm talking about anyone who invested in Global Atlantic. You'll see that because they don't sell insurance anymore. So that's why I stick with higher rated carriers or well name brand carriers because they have the last ability or they've been around for a long period of time. Corebridge did change their name. They used to be AIG, but you're still buying an American General life insurance policy. So it is still a 100-plus-year-old insurance company that you're buying it from, just a different wrapper. Just a heads up with that. I also believe in diversification of index strategies. So when you talk about these, they're not back tested long enough to really give you a solid foundation. So what I like to do is diversify, whether 2 funds or 3 funds. I always like to make sure that there's some S&P 500 in there because that one is back tested. It's tried and true. And you'll see there's an 11.5 cap on this one, 100% par in 75. If it's 100 or above, that means it's less aggressive and more conservative. If it's below 100, that usually means it's a more aggressive index. So volatility could play well for PIMCO. Non-volatility could play better for MLSB. And then you got tried and true S&P as well. Some people will just do 100% here. There are other carriers that only have S&P like Columbus, where all they'll do is S&P. So it won't look as good as some of the others, but it might be more realistic for your consumer, just an FYI. What I also do to temper the expectation of the client is I reduce the illustration rate down to about 6%. Now, why do you do that? With everything that we talk about, we want to underpromise and overdeliver. This is never an equity replacement. This will never outpace stocks. The fee structure and everything, this will not outpace stocks. However, it has living benefits, it has tax-free cash accumulation, and it has downside protection. So when you think about how that's structured in the grand scheme of things, when you talk about the idea of how this is designed, this is more like an aggressive bond. Okay. Bonds usually steady 4%, 5% returns, where you can get 7, 8, 9, 10% returns in some years. This is more like an aggressive bond to once again go back to our conversation from 2 weeks ago, diversify your portfolio. Not flip it and put it all in there, but diversify it so you have multiple ways to get to your retirement. So I'm going to skip disbursements for a second here. I'm going to go to policy options, and you'll see it's increasing the whole time. Solve for 1 to 15, I'm funding. I want to make sure that the increasing lasts the exact same amount of time, 1 to 15. And then I want to change it to level. And I'm going to also uncheck this because I, once again, told you in the beginning, carriers jockey for position to get to the top of the spreadsheet, and they'll show different things that the client has to manually do later, and they're not going to do it. So if we do 1 to 15 increasing and then 16 to max level, I promise you right now, these are complex products. When you sell this to a consumer, make sure that if you're not around in 15 years to tell them to change it to level, they have an instruction manual. Dear so-and-so, based on our initial conversation, your projection is to put 15,000 in for 15 years. Once you're done funding, we have to call the insurance company. Here's my cell. If I'm not around, here's the cell or the number for the carrier so you can switch it from increasing to level. Why do we do that? Because if you kept it increasing, the death benefit grows, but the cash will start to deplete and you won't get as much cash, if any, if you keep that going. So you reduce your cost of insurance to level to help your client get more income on the back end. Discounts, riders, we're not going to talk about those today. We're just going to do plain vanilla, and I'm going to go to disbursements and check the box here. Now check the box, we hit the calendar, and now I'm going to go to age. So this is where you want to check with age because it can get a little funky because you might be like, what's 40 plus whatever to get to 65? But we don't want to take income until we get to 65, and I'm going to go to 89, and then I'm going to double click here, solve for max. That is a total of 25 years worth of income. The average mortality is between 80 to 82 for most humans. We're going to 90. Okay. Now, the other thing is that you have different loan options with carriers. Okay. There's loans, switch of basis withdrawals. We always go with loans for these type of policies, but then you have participating and standard. Most carriers have participating and standard. Standard is a net zero cost loan after you get usually past the first 10 years. So they charge you 2%, they credit you 2%, but you're not active in the market for that money that's being set aside. It's going to be in a fixed bucket. Participating means you're going to have a fee no matter what. AIG is talking 5.5%. And then at that point, if you get over 5.5%, you get a positive growth on your cash that's being borrowed still. You get the difference credited to your account, positive cash arbitrage for your consumer. On the flip side, it can go negative. So if your client goes below 5.5, most carriers will charge the 5.5% with no positive cash credit. Just an FYI. So as we get older, do our consumers look more to be aggressive with participating or conservative with standard? That is up to them and you to decide when you get to that standpoint. Most people will say, well, the S&P has an average of anywhere from 8 to 10% since inception. So I'm going to ride this. More often than not, I'll win versus lose. Other people who are more conservative, like I have one of my top agents, will do standard loans the whole time because he would rather underpromise and overdeliver. That one, I'm going to leave it up to you because you will know your client better. But once again, having a roadmap or opportunity to talk to them about having this, sheet that adds value, that's what separates you from your competition. And it gives them a clear roadmap and it shows that you care. So just think about that as you go through this process. Also doing policy reviews every single year. So I know I did this accurately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the multi-carrier piece. So this is 2 lessons in one: how to work WinFlex and how to run, LIRP scenarios. So let's say, for example's sake, we want to look at 3 carriers total. I'm going to click on this little copy button over here, and it'll give me another Phil Resch QOL Max accumulator. On the right-hand side, you hit change product, and now we're going to integrate a new product into the mix. So for example's sake, I'll pick, let's go with, let's start out with my other friends here at Symetra. And you'll see here, accumulator, protector. It's really in the name. You can't sell VULs, most of you on this call. Current assumption UL, we don't want that either. So we look at the accumulator and click on Update Client. It should carry over everything, except you'll have a couple things that you have to change. So I usually go through Fix All Errors to clear that. I got Standard. I have no flat extras. Index account. So once again, they have their Putnam account. I don't want to put it all in there, so I'm going to do 50 there and 50 into the S&P. And then I'm going to bring these down to 6%. So once again, you have more of a balanced approach. It won't look as good as a consumer. And when you are in competition with another agent, understand that you have to see how they're structuring their policies so you can tell the consumer, I can give you that. I can put these up to the max rates, but do I think that's ethically going to happen? More than likely not. So I'm giving you more of a realistic expectation with hopes it does better, but I can do the exact same thing. Because most of you, I know you already are competing with carriers that you can also illustrate. So solve for, you'll see here a minimum non-mech. That's accurate. We're not going to reduce the face, so we're going to keep it level after. 15,000, they give you H to start. I'm checking to make sure year is accurate, annual, and then we go to disbursements. Once again, here I want to check age. It's like flip-flop. It's crazy. They're doing par loans. And then we've got here 1 to 15, increasing level. Everything seems accurate from this standpoint. And we are good. So now I want to add one more carrier. So I'm going to click on the link here, and then I'm going to change the product one more time. And I'm going to go up and do, let's see, let's do Allianz just for fun because they have a different design. So let's start. Now it's like, oh, saw these extra things. Let's fix the errors. No flat extra. Standard 40, solve for. Minimum face, max accum. So they got that. That's accurate. Years, disbursements. We got that. All's good. Increasing. So if you see I click on it, it changes. So once again, just little funky things that you pick up on. And then we got the allocations here. They already have it diversified. But what I would say is from their standpoint, they're not adding the S&P 500 in. So I would probably personally do this. Once again, everybody is different. And then I'm going to drop it to 6, 6, 6. We're not doing the mark of the beast. But now I've got 3 carriers and I haven't illustrated a thing yet. And a lot of you would be like, all right, now I have to click calculate for Allianz, Symmetra, Max Accum. And you don't have to do that. So if you see, if I hit calculate over here, it'll just do Allianz. But if I check the box over here on the left-hand side, some of you might not see it depending on your view, but it would be over here, check the box, select all. And then I'm going to go up to calculate and click calculate. It'll run all 3 at the same time. Now, as these are calculating, someone did ask on what basis were these carriers selected. Is there any criteria? The answer is no. You are the architect of your own design. Now, what I would say is that there's usually a core 5 from the IUL standpoint that we look at because I want to simplify it, and I picked 2 that aren't part of that core 5 just for funsies. But, you know, we like to look at AIG, North American, F&G, Allianz, or not Allianz, National Life Group, and Columbus. So, but nonetheless, here, there's no rhyme or reason why I picked these guys. It was just for fun. And so now you see that we got 3 illustrations here. Now here's a cool thing. I know I did it accurately because 15,000, 15 years, and you see the numbers are really close. So if you have one outlier that was like 700,000 here, you know you messed up on that one, just an FYI. But now we can go in and analyze and look at the different things from each carrier. So if I click on this one, it's going to open up. What we're going to do here is expand it out so everyone can see it. We're going to go to, first off, the page which has all the disclosures and stuff like that. You'll see 266,125 and 91 cents. Why such a funky number? Because we're trying to find the least amount of death benefit possible to give you the most accumulation and growth at a 6% rate of return. All these numbers are factored based on rate of returns and what you're putting into them. And if you'll notice here, 15,000 is what I'm planning on. The guideline level premium is 15,000. So it is, you are capping the amount that you can put into this policy. Okay. So from that standpoint, real funky number, but that is the lowest number. If I put it any lower, I have a possibility of turning this policy into a mech. If I put it any higher, then I'm paying more for costs of insurance. So we're going to continue down and see how this policy works compared to the other ones. And I skip down to the ledger, the money page. Now, keep in mind here, however you have conversations with people, they're always going to ask you the question, Well, I got all these zeros here. So if you talk to like a New York Life representative, the New York Life representative will immediately go to the guaranteed charges and the 0%, scroll down to the page where the policy lapses and says, your policy is only good for 26 years. You're not getting any cash out of this. That's not the case. Okay. Now, keep in mind, there is flexibility and design. You are truly independent. So, am I showing you all IULs? Absolutely. But does that mean you can't do the exact same thing with whole life? You can. And whole life is good for some people. Some people will want that guaranteed cash growth. And guess what? You can sell it. So the reasons why maybe you didn't sell it in the past is because you didn't have access to it. You have access through us. So it's not a bad product. There's just bad people who are saying wrong things about it. So that's all I'm going to say about that. We can always dive into a whole life education as well. It is, everything has its place. Okay. So I'm just throwing that out there. But this is, yes, dialed more to IULs. Guaranteed charges, that means the carrier is putting the worst possible charges ever on these policies from day one. And you're making absolutely no money for 26 years. So if the market had a zero or negative for 26 years in a row, I can promise you this, there are worse things that are going on than a bad life insurance policy. And that's when the the sky is falling, and all the other stuff, locusts and whatever. So we have to understand that this is required by law to show, but more than likely on the right hand side with the expectation of 6%, I'm going to give my client 25 years of 51,739. So if we look at that, 25 years times by 51 739 equals $1.2 million off of a $225,000 investment. And all the way through this process, I have living benefits on me that if I don't make it to the retirement I think I'm going to make it to, my wife will get a tax-free death benefit, or I'll get living benefits to help me get some type of care through heart attack, stroke, cancer, long-term care type features. All of that is built into this policy. Now you'll see here, the agents are all like, yeah, but what do I make on this? The target premium, FCP, 4,558. So you can see that if we scroll back up here to this page, it shows you target premium. But just understand, you'll have single premium here, 7-pay. Don't worry about any of those. Those are just tests to make sure that the policy doesn't become a mess. Do not have your client go through and do a 7-pay as the normal premium payment. Okay, just FYI. What will happen is you can put 18,000 in for the first like 3 years. Then the premium decreases for like the 4th year, 5th year. You might not even pay a thing, and then it just defaults back to $15,000. Just an FYI. You can try it if you want, and then I can say I told you so, or I'll say it right now, I told you so. So we looked at AIG. Now let's look at Allianz. Allianz is notorious for having higher rate of returns, higher incomes, and higher targets. So you see a lot of people out in the market with that commission breath selling Allianz because it's going to show higher premiums. Doesn't show higher targets and all the other stuff. Now, there are some cool things about Allianz, but there are some pain in the butt things that I've learned after selling Allianz for a year and a half. First off, they have the automatic upgrades. So if you get standard, you'll go all the way up to preferred, maybe even preferred plus. So that's kind of cool. But on the flip side, if you don't sell annual and you sell monthly, you're going to have 11 months of your premiums in a penalty box till the next anniversary, and then they go in the market. If you sell a plan premium of say 15,000 like we have here, and then I want to put another 15,000 in, that's not the plan premium, penalty box, wait for a year, and then it goes in the next year. So there's some funky things, and they really hate juvie policies. I wonder why. So you'll see that in certain scenarios, they're good. Other scenarios, I kind of tend to shy away. But the other thing too is they do hide behind their 6% rate of, or their higher rate of returns. And you'll see here that if you match them at the 6% rate of return, you showed a more realistic expectation, 46,000. So that AIG policy actually looks better. And that's some of the interesting thing. Someone asked, what's the average rate of returns you've seen for IULs? Well, it depends because when I was a regional VP, we had the MLSB for AIG. I saw it hit 13%. I saw it hit 12%. I saw it hit 10%. And then the last 2 years, it's hit donuts because it's been a bad market. Same thing with the PIMCO. It's that hit 17% 1 year. It hit 13, it hit 0, it hit 4. But then zeros again for the last couple of years. So when you talk about the average, the reason why I say 6% is because it can temper. Remember, these are not short term. We're not looking to tell our clients that they can pull out income in 5 years. If your client is older, like in their 50s, they need to put way more in. Otherwise, it's pointless. You're going to lose the surrender charges and cost of insurance. So you have to make sure that's the right fit for the right client. We usually target somewhere in the 20s all the way up to about 50, 55. Once again, 50, 55, you want that higher numbers. Which ones do you recommend to avoid? Well, that's funny because the insurance carriers, I treat them all like my children. Everyone has a good story. Even F&G, which has gotten a lot of bad press because of certain ways of selling. If you mitigate down to 6%, you'll find a lot of people have higher costs and they hide it behind the percentages. But if you can just once again go back to that realistic expectation of 6%, even 5.5%, the person asked the question, I know you're very heavy with whole life. You even ran an IUL at 5.5%, very conservative, and compared it to a whole life, you might see some expectations or closeness to the two of them. So it's a good way to kind of go back and forth between the two. But I don't like to say there's a bad carrier. I think it's just bad ways of illustrating things. Because Allianz, if I did max illustration rates here, they beat the pants off AIG because they have 7%, 7.25. And you'll see the AIG target was around 4,000 some odd. This is at 53.64. So once again, Allianz does buy opportunity from agents based on commission breadth. So last but not least, Symetra, I find to be a good additional carrier. If you don't need the living benefits, Symetra has been a pretty good go-to for me. As we go down to the money page, which is very far down, you'll see 15,000, you'll see 15,000, and they're about on par with AIG. Okay, Target about in between the two of them. So another great carrier. They have a great protection product too, but no living benefits except for on their permanent. It's half of the death benefit. They have a chronic illness rider. So you can pay up for a full chronic illness rider, but I think AIG still has the better pay up with the AAS rider. So someone asks, is AIG the go-to? Again, depending on age, depending on health, there's a lot of things that come into a factor here. I had 11 1099s last year because of between annuity sales, between different IUL carriers, second to dies. There's always different scenarios. And, for some of those who deal with a lot of people who have a touch of the sugar, who might, I got a standard on tobacco for someone with an 8.0 A1C. And that's not common, but Columbus has 3 table shapes to move you up to standard, where everyone else will give you a table 3, table 4. And so when you talk about cheaper costs of insurance, there's different carriers that'll give you a different fit. So what I always like to do is I always like to look at 3 or 4 carriers. And then when I go to the client, I'll show 2. Say I ran 4 or 5 carriers. I have the whole list if you want to see them, but these are the 2 I'd like to go between. And it's a little bit of a sales technique too, because if I give you A or nothing, you're going to pick A or nothing 50-50. But if I show you A or B, you have a higher likelihood that they're going to pick one or the other versus nothing at all. So it's just another way to do that too. But if you, statistically speaking, if you show more than 2 options, they tend to not pick. They tend to say, I'm going to have to think about it. So you can say that you work with a lot of them. These are the 2 that you thought were the best, and then go from there. So this is a strategy or an idea to show you how a LIRP works. Again, finding the least amount of death benefit to give you the most amount of income. Now, what I will do too is I will share with you this. With this scenario, you have 266,000, 248, 262,000. Real funky number. Now, Mr. Resh, I'd like to share with you an idea. So I show this as well. Okay. I'd like to share with you an idea, what I do for most of my successful people. You're only 40. Most people hit their peak earning years, mid 40s to early 50s. Is that fair to say? Well, yeah, you're growing in your company, whatever. Um, if I showed you what I would call a buffered strategy where we increase the death benefit a little bit to offer you higher living benefits, offer you more death benefit, but also room in that guideline level premium for you to put more money into later, is that something you'd be interested in? Well, sure. What are you thinking? So in this scenario, I found the floor. It's around 260, 250 in that range. Now here's another trick. I know Mike Grinnell here. I'm going to call you out. You were excited to see me run 3 illustrations at one time. Well, if I want to copy, I got all 3 that I ran again, and now I can just make quick modifications. So if I want to do a no solve, and let's just say we take it from 266 up to 350. Okay, clean number, adding 100K in death benefit. Symetra, solve for, no solve, 350, 15,000. None of the other stuff changes, just so you know. Solve for, no solve, 350. See what happens. So I hit calculate again. Now, the cool thing about doing all this with the WinFlex is that, let's say you have a husband and a wife. You ran all the husbands, then you hit copy, you run the wife, and I'll show you something really cool in a second too that you can do with WinFlex to make it even easier to run them all at the same time. But we'll go here, we'll calculate, take a sip. Okay, same premium. The face amounts 350, 350, 350, so that even kill. Click here. And we're going to see how this impacts the policy. So all the other ones, the max you get is 15,000. That's your guideline level premium as well. Here, what we're doing is we're adding space for you to put another 4 grand, almost 5 grand into the policy later on. For us as producers, never hurts. We'll get a little bit more compensation, but more living benefits for your client, more opportunity for growth later if they want to juice it up even more. But let's see what the impact was to the cash. It was about 51,000. We dropped by $1,000. 49,552. It's all hypothetical anyway. It's a cleaner number, and it gives you more opportunity. So, as you can see there, not a huge difference. Going back here, we'll look at Symetra. Same thing. We're going to scroll down. Good God. All right. So for them, I don't know why it went up. I must have done something wrong. Oh, you know what? When you copy over Symetra, I think they go back to their original index account. Yep. See. So I say it's always good to double check before you send this out to someone. Question was, we don't want to confuse clients, so how many solutions do you usually show maximum at one time? 2. I tell them I ran them all in the back end, then you pick your favorite 2. That way it looks like you're not biased. That way it looks like you're a broker versus an agent selling one company. And that way it just looks a little better. All right, so let's try Symetra again. And it should be less now. But as you can see, the difference there. So now they're going to be 48,000. So really, from their point of view, you lost again once about $1,000. Target went up, And the guideline for them, you have to kind of search for, is 19,996. So once again, another $4,900 for them. And then last but not least, Allianz will probably take the biggest hit, but we'll see. The reason why they might is because they were at 246, the other carriers were at 266. So we'll see what it does to the impact of their cash. As my computer is slowing down. There we go. All right, so target's now 7,500, 350. And you'll see here, it's about 44,898. Guideline for them is going to be 20,952. So you'll see they have a higher guideline because their face amount was smaller than the other two. So you can put more into this policy than the other two if you're going to do annually. So those are some tricks of the trade to give you an idea on how to run certain illustrations and how to do that. Now, the one thing I'll share with you too, just one quick trick of the trade. So you'll see Phil Resch and Phil Resch. Well, let's say we wanted to see Mrs. Resch, and I'm going to just take this off, or excuse me, I'm just going to uncheck these first. Okay. And now here, I'm going to go to insured, and let's just say Danielle Resch. Change the name, change it over here, but didn't change these two. If I right click and hit copy answer to checked, it now changes all three. These are unchecked, so it didn't mess with them. She's 35. Now these still say 40. So I have to right click and copy answer. And then it moves to, well, let's see if it moved to this one at least. 35, copy. I guess there's some things you have to change yourself. So that's why you always double check too. You can do the same thing, go through the whole process, and this helps you. I was gonna change the sex. Wow, two people, uh, both from different sides of the country. I know. Female, copy, female, female. So that works. Thank you both. Um, and so yeah, and then I can hit calculate. I didn't change any of the other adjustments, but I was just showing you something else that you can do to simplify the process. So say you have a buy-sell agreement and you got two people, Phil Resch and Danielle Resch, they both need $1 million in term. So you click one, get one ready, copy, change it, and then go on your merry way and add more if you want to. So it's just additional value add that you can do inside of the software that a lot of people don't realize. But the last thing I'll say is, let's say all these illustrations are good and I want to send them off to someone. Now, could I go through each PDF and save them all? Sure. Or I could hit the send button. I could save them. I'll just say test clients, and then I'll hit save, saving in all 6 of these. So if I want to go back, I could just go to the cases. Now here, what I do is I email it to myself. Okay. I didn't spell it right. All right. So I'll email it to myself and then I'll hit send. Now, what I'll get in my emails is the following. Drag it over. You'll see this. So this is where what I would do is I would set up another email, and this is where I would say, Phil Resch quotes, Mr. Resch included is da 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 da. I picked these carriers, whatever, and then click here to see quotes. This expires in 30 days. And then All you gotta do is copy and then paste. And then when you send it, they'll be able to click on that and see all the illustrations. So it is a great way to send everything in one shot. Puts the ball in their court. You can follow up with them from that standpoint. I personally would rather do it over Zoom with them and show them rather than send all these quotes to them because let's be honest, you want to protect your practice. You don't want other agents to see what you ran for them to badmouth you. And then there's the other stuff from that standpoint too. But if they're like, send the quotes, then send the quotes and you can do it real quickly this way. So that's a quick overview on how to illustrate LIRPs. As I mentioned in the beginning, I'll mention again, we are going to do more stuff revolving around retirement practices, different ideas for business solutions and business owners in this quarter. This will all be posted on my YouTube channel either later today or tomorrow. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe so that way you can just get it in case you miss it. You'll also get newsletter emails. There's always good stuff in there, so don't delete them, just actually look at them. And then most importantly, once again, if you have not registered for this yet, tgcconference.com, it is free. So if you need to buy a ticket to fly, if you need to buy a ticket to come to the event, it's not buy a ticket to the event, but stay on site. It's $229. That's pretty cheap for the Gaylord, which is usually around like 300, 400 per night. But we got a lot of stuff going. The idea of collaboration is there's several marketers coming together who aren't part of our organizations, but we felt the idea is if there's a brain share, a mind share, an opportunity where you can grow, I don't care what affiliation you're with, you will grow 25 to 50% just by coming to this event. Love to see you there. tgcconference.com. Any questions? I don't see any yet. I'll give it 1 minute. And while I do that, once again, some of the additional stuff we'll go over this month or this quarter, 401ks or retirement strategies for business owners. We'll talk about buy-sell agreements, key person. We'll talk about different ways to illustrate those too and how to conceptually do that with your consumer. Whole life, we'll talk about whole life. And so if you sell a lot of IULs and you're just curious about whole life, better understanding, we'll talk about that too. So this is not the end, this is the beginning of something that's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I'm looking to take the great collaboration on the road. So we talk Houston, we talk, Orlando, Miami, talk Raleigh, Chicago, LA. I'm thinking all over the place, but those will be 1 day, probably like 2 to 4 hour events, opportunities for people to come in, see how this industry works. And again, it's all in what you want to make it. So if you guys are considering wanting to do something like that in your area, if you want it, we'll make it happen. So I'm here to help you grow. I'm here to help you learn. I'm here to help you help your communities because that's what we're here to do. Help your community will help you. So with that, I don't see any other questions. Look forward to seeing you guys here. Have a great rest of your day, great weekend, and we'll talk soon.